Welcome back to Totem Pole Sports. Coach Hutchings here. We got Coach Old School in the house, and we got Coach Lambo. Today joining us is Danny Black of Sports Baltimore. You can check him out at sportsbalt.com. Danny, how you doing today?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, appreciate you being here as well. Danny, go ahead and tell Totem Pole Nation about yourself, where they can find you, what you're all about.
Yeah, so I know we have Coach Old School here, but I'm pretty old school myself. I started as a dealer 30 years ago in the sports card world, and uh, did shows and back when they were in malls and VFWs and with the Beckett magazine, and all through there, I went into private business for 17 years and came back as full time sports card broker. So I write for a paper in Baltimore on the hobby, and I do a lot of media. And I consult with a lot of the tech companies coming into the space. And on top of that, I'm lucky enough to work with some cool collections and some cool items and be a high-end broker. So a little bit of everything. I'm kind of the Forrest Gump of, I guess, of the sports card world. But I've always had a love and a passion for sports. I worked for the Orioles and the Braves out of college, and so I've always tried to stay close.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you having on. I think Coach Old School is going to lead off. He's got a card here that he believes to be 100% authentic. And I'll go ahead and
I believe that's the 2011 reprint, isn't it? Or is that just totally a photocopy?
that
Yeah,
is the Mickey Mantle rookie card.
it's the 52 mantle fake. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I told him, he said, this thing's worth $45,000.
A guy sold that to me for $150. And I think you're right. I do not think this is authentic. It is too perfect to be.
I can promise you through the video that you overpaid by 149.99.
Man, I tell you.
Yeah, you got
I
to be
should
careful. You
talk
got
to
to be
you first
careful.
before I bought that. Tell us about your Twitter, Sports Ball.
Yeah, so I like to cover the world of sports and cards and little gambling, and I hit the Orioles, the Ravens, being a former employee of Major League Baseball, and I worked for a radio station in Baltimore. Just kind of getting some of the other stories out, maybe a different perspective, maybe things that people haven't caught and are not quite as mainstream, and or basically just having fun and talking trash. Yesterday I picked a fight with Ken Golden in the middle of the afternoon.
And
That's never
Ken
that.
Golden, he's the one that was opening up the Michael Jordan 1986 Flair cars with Drizzy Drake, wasn't it?
Well, and they just sold the Aaron Judge ball for I think half what the guy was offered.
Yeah, it was
So
1.5 million when it was
instead,
already 3 million offer. Yeah.
yeah. So I enjoy Twitter for what it is. It's
So what
fun.
was
It's
this Kenny Golden? What was he saying to you?
he says that the guy made the decision on his own to turn down the 3 million. That Golden had nothing to do with that. They didn't get involved until the guy decided to auction it. So unfortunately, he feels that they're getting a bad rep. That it was really the guy who had the ball. But I got news for you. Somebody offers me $3 million for one of my kids, they can have them. I would have taken that money so fast. They wouldn't have finished getting the word million out of their mouth, and I would have taken the deal. So, best of luck to that guy.
I have an 11-year-old grandson, and he really got into sports cards last year. And we started watching these YouTube videos, Sports Card Investor
Yep.
and Rolf Cards and Sports Card Taxi and Sports Collector 2 and these influencers.
Yep.
How do you feel about these guys? Are they really sports card guys? Are they really sports guys? Are they just in it for the money?
Well, you know what? That's a very good question, and I'm going to be for full disclosure. I know a lot of those guys, and I do content creation, so I have been accused of being mainstream influencer for the hobby. However, I will tell you that no, they're all different. Some of them are absolutely in it for the money, without a doubt. Some of them are just true collectors that started shows even pre-pandemic for years before that didn't get popular till the pandemic. And those I look at a little bit different. Guys that putting out YouTube videos, for 6, 7 years, when nobody was watching and they kept putting out content every week. I respect that grind, and good for them for getting popular, with the pandemic if they happen to. People who came in at the pandemic and are just trying to get a ton of sponsors and and stuff like that, I look at that a little differently. I love cards. I love sports. I mean, to me, this is a passion. I've never been able to, walk away from sports in my whole life and be happy. So for me, this is such a blessing to be able to talk about it and be a part of it. And I can't see not having that passion and trying to make a career or a life out of this.
And so you mentioned just the COVID realm. I know prices have gone up throughout COVID, just because of the way everything kind of just went, however you want to even phrase it. But what is your thoughts on the pre-pandemic card market versus the post-pandemic card market?
Yeah, and great question. During the pandemic, I mean, if you have a steady curve in the economics that goes up at a slow pace, that's kind of what the card market always was. The pandemic was like somebody put Mount Everest right in the middle. So you had what was your consistent line, and then you've got this huge spike for the pandemic for a million reasons, macro, micro, and then it comes back down and everybody says we're having kind of a crash now in the prices. Well, the prices at now are actually still higher than where they were pre-pandemic. They're just nowhere near the pandemic numbers. But what I think the pandemic did do was bring a lot of people back into the hobby. And having more kids involved and having more people get involved, even professionals, to have a good healthy outlet. It really can be just pure fun. And what I get to teach my boys about, the guys I grew up watching and pass down those stories. And it's a lot more exciting. I mean, I'm a Ken Burns fan, but it's a lot more exciting when you get to hold the cards and actually tell the stories. And um, so there are far more collectors, and I would say that's the biggest takeaway from the pandemic. Not, the pricing will eventually even out to whatever it's going to be, but having more kids involved, having more collectors involved, having more people who learn the history of the cards and the sports, that's the cool part.
So if someone was to get into the hobby now, what would you suggest they collect?
Number one, start with low price stuff that you love. You can never go wrong. Don't try to gamble on the high end stuff. Don't try to pick which quarterback, is going to get drafted, is going to make it. Because I got news for you: the pro teams can't do it. You're not going to do it either. So, if you're from, Baltimore like I am, I always say collect your favorite Orioles players, current, past, present. You can never go wrong if you like them, and then you grow into it the more you learn. And you can work your way up. But if you're not collecting stuff you enjoy, then it's probably not the right hobby for you. Anything that you do, unless it's a full-time job, you should enjoy what you're doing. So whether I know people who collect people from their home state, I know people who collect people with their birthday, I know people who collect players that have the same spelling in their last name. Whatever does it for you. It doesn't have to be expensive. Just enjoy it. I happen to collect the famous Bill Ripken error card that had the writing on the bottom. Well, there's about 15 different versions of that as they tried to cover it up. I like to try to collect all the different versions. Well,
I actually was the person that wrote that on the bottom of his bat. I know it's never came out.
Well, then I need you to authenticate my cards for me.
Man. Well, I was definitely the one that wrote that. I didn't like Billy Ripken. I like Cal. I like his daddy, Cal Sr. When my grandson went to a card show, he set up a table, and all these kids and all these adults would come over there, and they weren't actually worried about who their favorite player was, or they wanted to get all the Ja Morants or the LeBrons. They was worried about who's got the card with the different colors, and is it a numbered card? And
Yep.
I mean, I know they call it the junk wax era back in the 90s and late 80s, but haven't they kind of tried to make it more like high end, or like you're running and trying to get these cards just because they're a certain color? Could you tell people about that? What's all going on with the hobby and that?
Sure. So starting in 1981, there was a lawsuit that allowed Fleer and Donruss to make cards alongside of Topps. And once Topps stopped being the only producer, basically through the 80s and 90s, these companies printed as many cards as they could because that's how you sold more product. You just printed more, you sold more. Starting in the mid to late 90s and heading into the 2000s, people started realizing, wow, if you make, Michael Jordan only have 10 limited autographs, people will search for those cards and go after them. And that worked for a while until they overdid that as well. So now we're in what I call the junk parallel era. So you have your regular card, and then you got the parallel card in orange, the parallel card in red, the parallel card in green. and each one might only be out of, they might make 150 oranges and 200 greens and 400 reds. Well, when you add them all up, it's a lot of cards still. So, it's not quite as bad as the junk wax, just because, listen, there is some artificial scarcity, but yeah, I mean, you could,
Artificial scarcity.
yeah. Or manufactured scarcity is the other one. So, Coach, you couldn't be more right. I mean, it is one of the
silly.
things
It is silly. I mean,
it's one of the reasons I like the older cards. I mean, I do like older cards for that reason.
Yeah, I have 80 John Morant graded rookie cards. They're all different cards, no different colors. We don't have any. We don't have any high dollar John Morants. But if you go on YouTube and you look up #1 John Morant collection, we don't have any autographs or jersey cards, but we got almost every single one of his rookies. It's just because we're a fan. We like Memphis and we like Ja because he's the underdog.
So, and he's a great buy. I mean, you're not going to go wrong owning John Morant anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to send you that. Coach Lambeau, you got anything?
In your 30 years of collecting cards, what is your top 3 collected cards?
Oh, for me personally, all time the '89 Griffey Upper Deck. All time for this generation. That's a no-brainer.
Why is that? Is that because it just was the Upper Deck?
First year of
all
Upper
the
Deck,
money in him.
First year of Upper Deck, card #1, that great, beautiful picture, and then the legend of Griffey himself. I mean, it's kind of the 52 mantle. It's the 52 mantle of a different generation.
Yeah, it was my favorite player growing up was Griffey, and I used to swing like him and was terrible at it until I straightened my thing out and I was hitting home runs left and right.
And the second I said that card, you knew exactly which card I was talking about. Because that you just know that card. So for me, that's got to be on the list. And Coach Lambeau, I like that question. I'm going to say also, just being a Baltimore fan, the Johnny Unitas's rookie card, the beautiful color,
underrated.
One of the most underrated cards, one of the most underrated players. I think people forgot how great Unitas was. So that for me is going to be on the list. And then I'm going to give you a real weird third one. There was Coach Old School, you might know this story. The catcher was a spy. There was a guy named Mo Berg who was a backup catcher in the 20s, 30s, and he was actually working as an undercover spy for the U.S. government pre-World War II. So
he was on our side, or was he on the commie side?
No, he was on our side, and we sent him over. So they would do an all-star tour of Japan. They would have like Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and then some third-string catcher you've never heard of, and nobody really questioned why. Well, he ended up going to the top of the hospitals in Tokyo and taking film and sending it back for the U.S. government pre-World War II. So he actually delivered some of the only film they had going into World War II.
Great American.
Not only that, they've done a book about him, a movie about him. It's called The Catcher Was a Spy. And so for me, that is just that's one of those stories that it was classified for so many years that people didn't know, and it came to public. And what a cool, amazing story for a guy who was good enough to actually play Major League Baseball and man enough to serve his country and go overseas and really work as a spy. So I'll take the 33 Gaudy Mo Berg as my last card.
And that is awesome. Can you tell our fans, Totem Pole Nation, about card grading? Now, when my grandson started getting back into cards, I did not even know what this is, but everybody has to have a 10 or a 9.5. And what exactly does that all entail? Give us the history of that. And is that just overblown now?
Yes and yes. So it started in the early 90s with PSA, SGC, and Beckett, all kind of started within a couple of years of each other, and they were the main grading companies. And for the first time, there was a million of those '89 Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck cards, like I talked about. Well, now a couple of years later, I can say, well, mine's graded 9, yours is graded 8, so now mine's worth more. Well, that was the original kind of how it happened. Now it's just gotten out of control with modern cards. Because you're right, if they didn't pull a 9 or a 10, they're worth the same amount as if they're ungraded. I mean, the raw card is worth just as the same as an 8. So on new cards, the pressure to grade high is incredible. Now on the older cards, they don't expect good grades. So if a 52 mantle, you know, you don't expect a high grade. You know, you'd be thrilled. You can still have 52 manuals that are worth six figures that grade, you know, under a five. So you know, it's a whole different thing in the vintage cards. But you know, you got to be careful now with these modern cards. You know, if you buy a card that's not graded, you know, it might have something dinged up on there that you don't know if you don't see it in person. So, you know, I love shopping at shows because I can see stuff in person. But if it's not in person, that grading at least gives me some sort of safety net to know, you know, what I'm getting is not fake. It's not damaged to a certain degree. But you're paying for that, and that's where they get you. You know, you're paying to grade, and you're paying the premium on the card if it is graded. So it's a double-edged sword.
So when people go to buy cards at these shows and they say, well, it was comped at this, and they want to pull up an eBay sale of some idiot in Seattle that has paid way too much for a card, what is that all about? It comped and this and
Comping is comparing prices, and it's a very controversial topic. Like anything else, you don't want to pay more than the person before you paid. You know, you want to pay whatever fair market value is. The problem is it's like artwork. You know, what do you perceive it to be? So there's always that battle, and there's a dealer that had a great sign. Says if you like the card and you like the price, buy it, but don't mention comps. So, you know, that's one of my favorite signs. That being said, if I'm buying a card, I don't want to pay double what somebody paid yesterday. You know, so I understand both sides of it. I will say with older cards, they're harder to find sometimes. And, you know, sometimes with those cards, I say, if you find what you want, just grab it. But with the newer cards, if they're available and they're plentiful, yeah, you know, it's okay to price shop a little bit, you know. So I understand both sides. I've worked as a dealer. I hate when people use comps on me when I'm selling. But at the same time, you know, it does kind of give everybody a starting place, I think, for negotiations.
Yeah, I got a question about maybe emerging card markets. I haven't really seen too much out there. I know NFTs are a whole nother thing. We're going to stay away from that.
Yeah.
No, thank you. But in terms of like UFC has skyrocketed in terms of what they have, and then you know, soccer worldwide, not really MLS, but is there any trends in any of those that are coming out where those are gathering some, you know, got some UFC Hall of Famers and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So during the pandemic, the big areas of growth, well, and part of it is because they didn't make a ton of cards pre-pandemic, but the UFC cards went through the roof. F1 went through the roof. And soccer went domestically through the roof, although internationally people have been collecting specifically the soccer stickers for a long time. But that being said, soccer is huge. Since the pandemic, you've seen, and even the wrestling have was
Brock
high, has
Lesnar.
come down. Right. I mean, you know, well, some of the Hall of Fame, you know, some of the big names, you know, especially the autograph cards still carry a lot of value, but they've come back down to earth a little bit. Soccer coming off the World Cup. I got news for you right now. Messi cards, you know, they're selling, you know, probably one a second right now on eBay. I mean, you know, all over the world, people, you know, are buying Messi or Mbappe. So the soccer's holding very strong. The other sports have been up and down a little bit. That being said, baseball, basketball, football, are always going to be the big three. I should say always for the next 5 or 10 years, at least will be the big three. And everything else is pretty distant. And I wouldn't be doing ourselves justice if I didn't say, because my son would kill me, Pokemon rivals the top sports. So actually in the amount of cards that are graded, so you can just see how much interest there is, Pokemon is comparable with basketball, baseball.
They never get hurt. They never get injured. They're never going to get a DUI or kill anybody.
Yeah, that is part of the attraction, without a doubt. Yeah, and that's just, but that's why I like the old guys too. Johnny Unitas ain't doing anything either.
No, he can never go down. Mickey Mantle, he can't find anybody better than Marilyn Monroe.
Well, unfortunately, the last time Unitas went down is going to be the last, is his final
Man.
one. So yeah.
And a few years ago too, Magic the Gathering, I made some good money on some of those older cards.
Well, those that Yu-Gi-Oh. I mean, if you hit, you know, and even Funko Pops. I mean, if you hit the right time in the right market for anything collectible, but you got to thread that needle carefully. Pokemon seems to just have a little
never
bit more
die.
staying power. I mean, we're heading on almost 30 years of Pokemon. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, it's very strong.
You said that you worked for the Atlanta Braves, and I used to be in Atlanta Braves until the city of Richmond was too stupid to buy a new stadium for them. But it makes me think about Chipper Jones. My son, he would go and ask for Chipper Jones's autograph. And Chipper Jones, I don't know if you know the story, but when he played for the Richmond Braves, he threw his bat when he struck out and hit the back of the bat thing, came back and broke his front two teeth out. But he would never sign. And Ryan Klesko, who was my son's favorite player, he'd always sign. But who are some of the guys that you have met in pro sports signing that were jerks, and then the guys that were good guys? And am I totally wrong about Chipper?
Well, Chipper's an interesting one. God gives talent to people, but doesn't give you always the brains to go with it. I don't know if Chipper ever meant any harm or if Chipper just didn't know any better. Chipper was a tremendous baseball player, and God gave him those gifts to hit a baseball. I dealt with Chipper and never felt like he was choosing between baseball and neurosurgery. I don't think those were his two options. So he wasn't great. Wade Boggs was a total jerk. I have no problem saying that
he looks worse than Willie Nelson right now. I just saw a picture of him and I thought it was Willie Nelson.
Yeah, Willie Nelson's a lot more fun to hang out with. Wade Boggs is just a jerk. I've run into him a couple times. Once when I was a child, and he cussed me out as a child, and once as an adult, and he was a jerk to me as an adult. So I'll say that pretty bluntly. The Braves, when I was down there when Turner Field opened. So I was down there after the Olympics, and I worked for them when opening day of Turner Field. So I was there with Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz, Chipper, Andrew Jones, all those great teams. And I don't know if you remember a guy who came through, Brian Coates, a player out of Clemson, had a cup of coffee with the Braves.
No, sir.
He's a Baltimore boy. He got a cup of coffee when I was down there. So I'll say Brian Coates was probably the nicest autograph signer I've ever met because we grew up back to back. So I'll give that to him. He's in the Clemson Sports Hall of Fame. So he was with the Braves. But I will say 90% of the players are nice. It's the 10% that ruin it for the other 90.
Yeah, I was trying to think back. I want to say it was the All-Star game in Philadelphia. What was it, 96? Or it might have been, I might be getting it. I think it was 96.
Yeah, you're right around there, but I was there, yeah.
And I remember, seeing it was this, and the Braves were hot and everybody was there. But I remember Chipper Jones, top player. I wanted to go see him, and the line was just wrapped around the entire place, and it was probably 90% women. And that still is just a vivid memory.
And I know are you a Braves fan from way back? Because Dale Murphy should be in the Hall of Fame, and he would never take pictures with another woman because it's against his religion. But Dale Murphy was a class act.
Dale Murphy won back-to-back MVPs, played multiple positions defensively well. He played in an era where home run round numbers were more important, I think. So people say he didn't get to 400 or 500. Well, that's fine, but Gale Sayers had a short career also. So, you can look, and make that argument that a Don Mattingly or Dale Murphy have a legitimate claim because of how good they were, for their peak periods. But, it was a tough one this year. I mean, McGriff had a long career, but, going into the
He's not Dale Murphy. Grip Dog was, the Crime Dog was good, but I have a special place in my heart because we watched them on TBS every night.
Well, back then, half the country got TBS. That's why there's so many Braves fans. I mean, I'm showing my age here, but when cable came out, everybody got TBS as part of their base package. This was before you had your regional networks. So,
yeah. Have you ever seen when Greg Maddux got all dressed up and was throwing them curveballs? That guy from Las Vegas, the Red Bull.
No.
You've got to watch this. They got this pro baseball player, and they have this lighting guy, and it's Greg Maddux, but he's got makeup on and everything. And he's the guy leaves that's throwing him BP, and Greg Maddux goes and starts throwing BP, and the guy's like, "Well, I really don't know." Then Greg starts throwing. He goes like, "That guy's got a pretty good curveball." You got to look at it, man. It's on YouTube.
Well, I got news for you. He could hit a Nets, with a ball if he wanted to. I mean, that was a privilege to get to watch those guys pitch in person. And that being said, we're getting to the age now where buy these rookie cards, guys. you know, in a different generation, you know, you could have bought a Jim Palmer rookie card back when it was cheap, you know, or a Steve Carlton. You know, you might be time to start looking at Maddox rookie cards and those guys.
So the steroid players, like the card my son loved was that Mark McGuire Olympic card. I think
Absolutely.
from the 84 top set. I could be wrong about that. I'm getting old. But how have the steroid players, how have their card prices fared?
They've gotten pretty killed, to be honest with you. It's a matter of supply and demand on a lot of them. They played during the junk wax era, so there's a ton of cards out there. There's not a lot of limited edition. I will say some of the newer sets are putting those guys in on limited edition cards, and you are finding their fans that are going after those. But like that McGuire card was so popular and so common, even if you like McGuire, there's not a lot of value in it because there were so many of them made. Now, if those guys get into the Hall of Fame, and you know, eventually those cards are going to be old, and there might be something there. But I think it's going to take the Veterans Committee a couple years to get them in the Hall, whether or not you think they should be.
It's the cards. So I'm talking about the collectibles. Is the Mo Vaughn or the Frank Thomas cards worth anything?
Frank Thomas had a error card where they didn't put his name on the front, and one of those was graded a PSA 10, and that just sold for over $100,000.
It's 1991 tops, right?
90 or 91, yeah, absolutely, with all the color around, and there was the name should have been in the bottom right on the blue label. You know, sadly, other than that, there's not a ton of value, and there should be. They were both great players. Frank Thomas specifically was one of the best right-handed hitters, I think, of a generation. What he could do, getting on base and power, but his cards just don't carry. You know, I don't know if it's just because it's still too new. We don't look at them like we look at some of the other guys, or you know, when he was at his best, you know, the cards weren't at their hottest, so he didn't have any real sexy cards. But yeah, you know, people love him. I think at some point, you know, his cards, because he's going to be a Hall of Famer, are going to definitely
the Nugenics or whatever he's working for too now, where he's on TV all the time.
Who are your goats? Like some people say this guy's the GOAT, and then go ahead, Coach Lambo, get that other one over there.
Yeah, Coach Lambo, who you got?
And they say, you know, this guy's the GOAT. People saying Michael Jordan no longer is the GOAT. Who are your GOATs?
What do I get? One? Do I only get one per sport?
You can probably give me three.
All right.
Your daddy's generation, your generation, and your son's generation. Give me three in each sport.
I'm a lover of this. We could do an hour just on this question, but real quick, I'll go basketball. I'm gonna go Pete Maravich, Michael Jordan, and LeBron.
Pistol Pete. Now that's an interesting one.
There's not enough film on him. He was so much better than people realize. He was AI, Steve Nash, John Morant, all put together.
There you go.
And he was all of them combined. So they figured out where the 3-point line would have been when he played. He would have outshot Steph Curry. So I just think he's terribly underrated, and he's, to me, a GOAT. Luckily, his cards are worth, you know, what they should be. So there's my basketball. Football got to be Unitas, and I'm going to be a homer on this. Ray Lewis, and I don't think we can turn down Tom Brady. So I'll give you a little bit of offense, a little bit of defense. Where does that leave me? Baseball. I mean, you got to go Ruth. Pure talent, Willie Mays, Ruth, and I'll stay away from pitchers, and I'll call Ken Griffey or Mike Trout. I guess I got it. I got to pick four here.
People are already crowning Mike Trout, but he's so injury prone, isn't he?
I mean, he's been in the league now over 10 years. He's been top 5 in MVP almost every one. You know, his numbers compare with anybody.
And his rookie card I've seen has gone down to $600 in a PSA 9.
Well, it depends which one. They're also still going over 100,000, depending on how.
I'm talking about just the base
ones, yeah,
upper,
exactly.
You know, update or whatever it is, the USA.
Yeah, well, that was during the pandemic. That got real hot, but I think we're going to look at him one day like we look at some of the great right-handed hitters.
And in this pitcher and hitter from Japan, tell us a little bit about him. I've only seen him play on the highlights. Tell us about this guy, Otani.
Well, you've got a left-handed hitter who had to change his swing when he came to the States. So his timing was in Japan was made for the off-speed pitches. He comes over here in one spring training, changes his entire swing so he can get to the fastball, so he can hit to all fields as a hitter with power and get on base. And then he's got 4 or 5 pitches that are plus pitches on the mound, then he's probably a number one starter on a regular starter schedule. You put those together, you haven't had a player like that since Babe Ruth with the Boston Red Sox. I think because he plays on the West Coast, because he plays late at night, because not a lot of people get to see him, you're really missing out, on one of the great generations. How many years is he going to do it? Well, now that's the magic question. It's hard to pitch and stay healthy. It's hard to hit and stay in the lineup every day and stay healthy, much less do both of them. So I think the DH gives him a little bit of a reprieve some days, but I got news for it. His talent is so immense. He could be with Dion or Bo, that type of athletic ability.
Is there any way that Kyler Murray goes and plays baseball? I know he was drafted in the top 5, and I don't know if football is where his money's at. What do you think
Russell
about that?
might need to make that transition too now.
Russell can't hit a curveball.
I got news for you. I think they should have done it the first time around. And gentlemen, enjoy your money. Enjoy. You tried, but you had your chance. And I got no sympathy. Kyler Murray told the Oakland A's he's not playing in football no matter what when they drafted him. You make a promise and you make a commitment. I don't care if you end up being a Heisman Trophy winner and you didn't think you were going to be. You don't put yourself in that position, or you don't make the commitment. You tell them, if I win a Heisman, everything's up in the air. Or if I have a chance to get drafted high, everything's up in the air. He made a commitment. He missed his chance, so in that regard, I just think you honor your word. And I feel that, both of them are probably, Russell's too old at this point. Who are we kidding?
He's from Richmond, Virginia. He doesn't even claim us.
No,
I mean,
he don't claim NC State neither.
He forgot where he came from.
Yeah, well, he also forgot how to play quarterback. So can't blame him. Yeah.
I got a question. I'm trying to think if it was because it was Michael Jordan when he made that transition into baseball. I've got his rookie card.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
The upper deck?
Yeah, the upper deck.
Practice?
Yeah.
It's a great card.
Yeah, I'm just keeping that one safe.
Well, unfortunately, everybody grabbed it because everybody loved Jordan when he went to baseball. The key is, and it's hard as heck, but if you can ever get that thing autographed, that thing is ridiculous.
I actually hated Michael Jordan. And
I didn't tell you to get it autographed.
I used to have his 1986 rookie card. It was a PSA, I believe 6.5. But I mean,
some good money.
I was a Celtics fan. He beat my team all the time. Just like there's people that didn't like Kobe and LeBron, and I mean, just hold on to that there, you young whippersnapper. Yeah. So you're a Ravens fan?
Well, I was born a Baltimore Colts fan. Then, due to unforeseen circumstances, I ended up a Ravens fan. Yeah.
My dad's the same way. Talks about Johnny Unitas all the time. Baltimore Colts. He's when they went to Indianapolis. No, thank you. Ravens. No, thank you. Now he just loves watching the former Redskins lose every Sunday.
So how do you feel about the Ravens this year?
We just got to stay healthy, man. It's like every other team in the league. If Lamar's not healthy and our offensive line isn't healthy, that's the engine that makes us go. The defense is going to be pretty solid. I mean, we did what the Ravens do. You bring in Roquan Smith and you just kind of grab casually one of the best linebackers in football. We got a great secondary, but Lamar just can't stay healthy. And I think it's because the offensive line's not giving him. I mean, if you look at the time he has in the pocket, they almost take it for granted that he's going to get out of, all the trouble he gets into, but they got to stop putting him in trouble.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, we were talking about that the other day, just in terms of lines blocking for these quarterbacks, how many guys have come through the NFL and great quarterbacks that have been screwed over because they had a line that just couldn't block and couldn't give them any time.
Absolutely. 100%. In fact, Lamar has said he'd rather pass from the pocket. Lamar does not want to run first. Yeah. And people have always misunderstood his talent for how he wants to play quarterback. But, his cards are hot. I mean, luckily they haven't gone down like Murray and Wilson. His cards are still hot. So we'll take that in Baltimore.
How do you feel about the Ravens as far as the Lamar Jackson contract situation? Like earlier this year, they're talking about 250 million guaranteed, and now that he's hurt, and then now y'all lost, against the Browns, the
No,
crucial.
wait a second. They lost against the Browns.
Yes, 13-3. They lost to the Browns, but
I am a Redskin fan, so you can have sympathy for me. But man,
they lost to the Browns, and since y'all have lost, I think 2 of your last 3 or 3-game winning streak or losing streak, you're now down the AFC North, and now the Bengals are on top. So, how are you confident that y'all going to make the playoffs, or how are you feeling? Because y'all did this last year when y'all started off 8-3 and then lost the rest of y'all games. So.
Well, last year, the injuries killed our secondary, and Lamar missed time again. I mean, this gets back to the Ravens need to invest in the offensive line, and they had listen, we traded up, we got the center this year, but I feel confident with a healthy Lamar we're going to make the playoffs. I don't feel confident we're going to do any damage if we don't have a healthy team. We just don't have the depth. I don't know how many teams do in the salary cap era. To sustain, injury after injury. I mean, if Philadelphia has been rolling along, if Hurts has a shoulder injury is down, their momentum just can't stay the same. If you've been in a locker room, it just changes the mentality. But the guys who are rolling this year, I mean, Burrow or Herbert, even Allen, those guys who have kind of stayed at that consistent, even Patrick Mahomes, their cards are people are saying, all right, these are the ones we can count on now. Lamar, with his contract, he bet on himself. He tried to pull the Aaron Judge. Might not have worked out as well.
I got a couple questions that might be, not necessarily Coach would talk about in terms of Aaron Hernandez, Dante Stallworth. Any of those worth anything?
Nope.
Yeah, I wouldn't
and
think so.
I mean, Deshaun Watson, Brett Favre, no money in there. For obvious reasons, even for a what and a giggle, people don't really want to spend the money on it.
Who are the hottest names in the sports card industry right now? Who are the ones that everybody wants cards of in each sport? Those three major ones. I know everybody wants Messi.
You got Messi. You got Messi at the top, and then you're going to come down about a million miles right now because we're coming right off that World Cup. But believe it or not, Jordan cards are still some of the most popular and some of the most bought and sold cards in basketball. So even with the current players, Zion is very hot right now, and Coach John Moran, extremely popular right now. Baseball, a lot of prospects coming out. In fact, the baseball draft release from Bowman Chrome is due out this week, and so you're going to see a lot of hot drafted guys. Jackson Holiday, being an Oriole fan, #1 overall. I mean, his rookie card will come out at a couple $100 to right out of the box. But you're in baseball off season, so there's a little bit of wait and see. Football, man, it's those quarterbacks. Brock Purdy. You want to talk about people who jumped
$40. His rookie card is $40.
It was 25 cents 3 weeks ago. I mean, that's if you owned Brock Purdy, you could have made good money in the last couple of weeks. So those names are up in the ones I said before: Allen, Burrows, Herbert. But the reverse is who got hurt and who's not playing. You got a lot of Trey Lance cards down. Kyler Murray down, Russell Wilson down. So you get both depending on how they play on the field.
Burrow or Josh Allen?
That's a good question. I'm going to say Josh Allen because I'll never root for the Bengals in my division.
I say that Josh Allen is bigger. He's bigger and he's got better escapability. I know that.
But he's got that little bit of gunslinger in him. Burrow, I feel
bigger
like
Favre.
Yeah, without the criminal welfare scam. Yeah.
Favre is a jerk.
A couple scandals with Brett
Favre is a jerk, and Josh Allen is kind of like
breaking news. Favre just unretired again. Sorry.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But if you
go to the Vikings,
talking about GOATs, in order to be the GOAT, it seems like Michael Jordan was cut in 10th grade. John Morant had no offers until the guy found him in the gym. I mean, Tom Brady didn't start as a freshman on a freshman team that didn't win any games. Messi was cut. I mean, is that something like Burrow? You left Ohio State, only had one offer coming out of high school. Is that something you think all the GOATs have? Is that adversity?
I think a lot of guys have the talent. Whatever motivates them, you have to have the drive to go with it. So I know for some guys, it's living up to, Kobe used to say he was in his dad's shadow growing up, and that motivated him. Well, it's amazing to think Kobe, didn't think he had enough talent that he had to live up to his dad. Grant Hill used to talk about Calvin Murphy, in the NFL, and he felt that family legacy. So I think some of it's that. Other things are other aspects in people's lives that motivate them, and I think that's true of sports or not. We're all motivated or a product of our experiences, for lack of a better term. And yeah, you need that motivation to be that great.
All right. Well, Danny, I'm going to give it to you now to let Totem Pole Nation understand where they can reach you. And, if you got a physical location or anything where they can show you stuff or send you anything.
And podcasts, what podcasts are you on? Do you have?
Yeah, well, I try to make it real easy. You can find me everywhere at Sports Balt. Sports BALT. That's Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, anywhere you want to find me. Podcast, available everywhere. It's the at Sports Ball podcast. So I really do try to make it easy, and it's once again Sports BALT, like Baltimore. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come on with you guys.
No, it's been very enlightening. Appreciate you sharing your stories and sharing your top cards, and definitely gave me some things to think about and get that thing back from my brother. That might have a lot of cards in it too from that Super Bowl. Turn it over to Coach Lambo to close us out.
Today's video is sponsored by Dude Wipes. Yes, it's the best product in America, the #1 product in America. 35% larger, 99% water, and it is fragrance free.
He does not use toilet paper anymore. He just uses Dude Wipes.
It's the best product in America. It's fragrance free. Please wipe your hands and Merry Christmas.
Well, Danny, thank you again. Totem Pole Nation, please check out Sports Ball on all forms of media, sportsball.com as well. Danny, thank you again. Have a wonderful holiday. And we hope to catch up with you soon and see where some trends are taking us here as we go into 2023.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Happy New Year to all of you.
Awesome. Thank you again.